Everyone is going to tell you to panic about Black Friday and Cyber Monday, that it's the biggest, scariest time of the year. But I'm not here to add to that noise, I'm here to simplify it. In this video, I'm going to break down one of the most important pieces of the Black Friday and Cyber Monday puzzle, your creative strategy, in the simplest and most time-efficient way possible. At BlueSense, we work with brands ranging from small startups to million-dollar spenders. And after years of testing and millions of dollars spent leading up to Black Friday and Cyber Monday, this is the exact advice I'd give if you were one of my clients. In this video, I'll be running through when to start planning, the top performing Black Friday, Cyber Monday assets that we see across the board, adapting your historical winners into Black Friday and Cyber Monday content, what your content ratio should look like, how many assets you actually need, what your Black Friday and Cyber Monday timeline should look like, and the biggest creative strategy mistakes to avoid. So when do you start planning for Black Friday and Cyber Monday? The answer is now. In 2025, September is the time to start preparing your strategy and identifying your winners. If you're a client of ours, we're already keeping track of what your top performing assets are and identifying winning assets from previous Black Fridays or previous promotions that you've run. Spilling into October, this is where awareness and testing should still be important. If you've got any new product launches, any new customers or personas you're wanting to test, now's a good time to do that before Black Friday. Otherwise, new customer acquisition and just getting new eyeballs on your brand should be important. This is for the halo effect so that when you do get into November, you can start retargeting and converting these customers. And then heading into early November and Black Friday, Cyber Monday, this is where you'll do things like your early bird launches, early access, and then significantly scaling and implementing your strategy from September when you go live with your Black Friday sales. Then getting straight to the point, what are the top 5 universal winning assets that we have seen across the board? And I would argue that this applies to 90% of e-commerce brands. Once again, if you're a client of ours, we'll help guide you on which of these are applicable to your brand. Number one, and this is absolutely one of the top performing assets across accounts and across industries, is the plain image with the clear offer. Something as simple as just a black background with the discount that you've got going, the name of the brand, and if you want to take it a step further, even something like a star review rating. I can guarantee majority of the time is going to be the top performer in your account during Black Friday. Next up is a DPA with your Black Friday or Cyber Monday overlays. So something like having a catalog pulling through from Shopify into your meta ads, just adding something as simple as a frame with the discount and your branding colors can do really well. Now the caveat here is this has to be for a brand where DPAs are already doing well for you. So for example, with a fashion brand, for instance. Third is our lo-fi founder or employee content. Now the reason I love this content is because it doesn't have to be difficult to make. This can be content like warehouse content we do really well. Founder-generated content where it's just a founder speaking to the camera or not even speaking at all, just putting text above their head. Packing videos also do really well. And generally, if you can fit some text above whatever's going on in the video, that can also really effectively stop the scroll. Then fourth, we have trends. And I know a lot of brands, especially large brands, are going to be against this. My argument here is you're not above the trend. You just haven't found a way to make the trend suit your brand. That doesn't mean that every brand should do every trend, but being out and on the lookout for trends where you feel like you can tie this to your values and aesthetic is key. And consumers generally enjoy seeing employees and founders having fun. The tricky thing with this content is it is time sensitive. You can't do a trend like this box trend, which was really popular a few weeks and months ago. So having someone on your team who's up to date with social media trends can be super useful here. In which case, the key aspect is really just getting the turnaround as quick as possible so that you still hit that trend on its upward trajectory. And then last but not least, we've got our video montage asset. These are some of my favorite assets, particularly for fashion brands or any brand where you've got a lot of product categories. It's one of the quickest ways to show exactly what your brand is about and what your offerings are. It also eliminates any risk where, let's say, someone doesn't like the initial pants shown in an image, but they like the second pair. They can see that product pretty quickly. And this can immediately spark intrigue. Next up in terms of preparing for your Black Friday creative strategy is adapting your evergreen winners. So once you've got those 5 top performers already prepared for Black Friday, this is what you should absolutely be looking at next. Again, if you're one of our clients, we'll already be tracking your evergreen content. And wherever applicable, we'll take that content and start converting it into Black Friday and Cyber Monday content. In general, the rule of thumb here is you should take about 5 to 15 evergreen winners. This will depend on the size of your brand and how many assets you test over time. And simply layering on things like urgency, giftability, and the discounts, as well as sales messaging, so like a Black Friday banner or a sticker, is absolutely key here. So overall, the idea is not to reinvent the asset, but just to repackage it. And if you're interested in all the best ways I recommend doing this, there's a whole separate video I've put together on adapting your evergreen winners for Black Friday and Cyber Monday content. Now, this leads me to your content ratio. So what should the breakdown of existing winning content and net new content be? And I'd go with an 80 to 20 ratio here. So 80% of your content, I would argue, should be your proven winners. This should be things like your evergreen content, your content from last year's Black Friday, Cyber Monday that did well, or any other promotions that you've been running over the past few months to identify winning sale content for your brand. Then I would argue that 20% should be new ideas. This should be things like new UGC, new trends, new shoots. Again, particularly if you're something like a fashion brand and you've got new products coming out, as well as things like employee-generated content and founder-generated. So the main focus really should be on the exploitation of your proven winners, which also should take a lot of pressure off, knowing that only 20% of your effort and content volume should really go to entirely net new content. So how many assets should you as a brand prepare for Black Friday and Cyber Monday? And the caveat here is it really does vary based on brands, but if I had to give a general guideline, I would say that for smaller brands spending 40 to 80K per month, your goal should be anywhere between 5 to 10 plus net new assets. And this is not iterations, this is not assets that look kind of similar. These are unique ideas with unique visuals or unique messaging. You should then also prepare 5 to 8 assets for a refresh, somewhere in the middle of your Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale. I like to layer in founder-generated content and warehouse employee-generated content around this time. And then lastly is your urgency content. So for a lot of brands, this may have to be prepared during your actual Black Friday promotions, purely because I recommend taking whatever assets you're seeing winning during your launch and then turning that into your urgency messaging. And literally just overlaying things like saying last chance or ends midnight or stock almost sold out, and running those new assets for the last few days of your promotion. For larger brands, so think any brand spending over 100K per month on paid media, at least 20 assets in your launch. If you're something like a fashion brand with a lot more products, then you're probably going to need even more assets. For your refresh, 10 to 15 assets, and then for urgency, at least 10. So how do those different assets look in different phases throughout Black Friday and Cyber Monday? As mentioned, September is where you should be doing your planning and keeping track of your winners. October is for awareness. This is a really good time for video content, UGC content, founder-generated video content. Build audiences that you could potentially retarget with video views, for instance, during November. Then early November, this is where you'll run your assets that include anything like early bird promotions, giveaways, early access, let's say, like for loyalty members. Caveat here is giveaways you may also want to be running in September and October if you're building up audiences to retarget through things like EDMs. Then you've got your Black Friday launch. This will be the mix of your 80-20 evergreen and net new content. Then after about 4 to 8 days of running your Black Friday and Cyber Monday content, your performance marketer will be keeping track of when we start to see fatigue, and that's when you should bring in your refresh content. And then in the final days or the final hours, this is where you should do your final urgency and last call messaging that is recreated off of your top performers during the initial Black Friday and Cyber Monday launch. From then on, you can shift into your gifting personas and shipping cutoff messaging in December. And something to flag here is when building your gifting personas, instead of saying something like the perfect gift for your girlfriend, rather go for messaging like the perfect gift for fashion lover. So really think of the perspectives that you're using in your messaging and targeting there. And finally, I'll wrap things up with the biggest mistakes we see brands make during Black Friday. Number 1 is leaving planning too late. Black Friday is often overwhelming purely because brands aren't thinking far ahead enough. Number 2 is not using video content to capture new audiences. There are a few brands where statics simply are the only assets that convert, but again, I'd argue that for the majority of e-commerce brands, video content will always be one of the initial touch points for a new customer. Third is spending too much on polished hi-fi content. And this goes hand in hand with ignoring lo-fi trends. The key here is that a lot of brands will spend so much time preparing and planning and scripting hi-fi content that costs them thousands with little to no proof that those concepts even work. Whereas if you go for lo-fi content that can take sometimes a few minutes to make, you'll gather learnings a lot faster and spend a lot less. Fifth is not using creative as targeting. And what I mean by this is not being specific enough in your customer personas. This comes down to things like your messaging and your ad copy, as well as your imagery and the people that you're putting in content like your UGC. You will target new audiences by making content that different users can look at and relate to. Sixth is too little asset diversity. When I say make 5 to 10 assets for Black Friday, I don't mean make 5 assets that all look exactly the same and have slightly different message. I want to see video content, I want to see GIF content, I want to see static content, I want to see carousels. I want my video content to have founder-generated content, UGC content, and employee-generated content in it. That's what builds creative diversity. And last but not least is bad naming conventions. It's easy to just get locked into Black Friday for this year, but we also need to keep in mind that preparation for this Black Friday is also our biggest experiment for next year. And if you can effectively keep track of your assets in a meticulous order, it'll also make identifying the key learnings and winning assets for next year even easier. So that's your 2025 Black Friday and Cyber Monday creative strategy in a nutshell. Start now, cover the universal winning formats, adapt your historical winners, balance your content ratio, plan the right number of assets, phase your campaign smartly, and avoid the common pitfalls. The brands that treat this as a structured plan, not as a last-minute scramble, are always the ones that win Black Friday. And if you're already working with Blue Sense, you'll know this is exactly how we prepare your campaigns behind the scenes, so you can focus on growth instead of firefighting.